Well, good evening, everybody. It's really good to be here tonight, and I know we're going to be talking about how much is enough. And this is probably one of the biggest questions that that homeschool parents ask themselves when you're planning your homeschool year, at the end of your homeschool year. And I know this to be true because I was a homeschool mum for over 20 years. I've actually had this year off being a homeschool mum, and I'm just heading back into it again for next year. And so I know what that journey feels like, and I know how often you ask that question and wonder if you're actually doing enough. Am I enough? Am I doing enough? Are my kids learning enough? There's just so many big questions about that. And I think that's because we really care about our kids. We care about them as people. We care more about them getting a good education than anybody else does. And so we really care about whether we're doing enough, and we're pretty critical of ourselves often because we look at what we're doing and we look at what other people are doing, and we can see all the amazing opportunities that there are, and we second guess ourselves all the time. And so tonight, what we're going to do is I've actually got some questions for you, and it would be great if you can pop them in the chat, pop some answers in the chat, because I really want to actually cover the things that you're thinking about and that you're worried about. And I've got some great tips for you at the end. So I've got the tips that I think that I came up with that mean I'm a lot more relaxed about this going into it now. So I'm going back into it with my youngest, and I'm right near the end of my journey. She's got very little time left in the homeschool world, and it's going to look really different to where I started, really different to where I started. And I know I'm a lot more relaxed now about that, and I don't second guess myself so much. I'm a lot easier on myself and my child than I would have been a really long time ago, over 20 years ago, probably 25 years ago now. And so I'm going to share those tips with you at the end. But first, I'd really love to get your thoughts. And so my first question is, what are the things that increase your fear and worry? What do you worry about not doing enough? It would be great if you could pop some of those things in the chat. I'm actually going to see if I can find the chat. And technology is not my greatest skill, I have to say. If I can't find the chat, I'm hoping one of my staff is watching and going to text me the chat. My computer did tell me that the chat would pop up underneath, and it hasn't. So while you're just typing in, what are the things that, so the question is, what are the things that increase your fears? What are the things that you worry most about? So Sarah's put whether you've covered enough topics during the year. Yeah, actually, I can see thanks Sarah, I can see the comments coming up now, so I'll keep an eye on that. So Sarah has mentioned the topics, and that's really true, because you want to have enough topics. Mindy has mentioned that she might not be covering enough content, or being worried that her child isn't learning enough. Ali has mentioned, has she really covered the mainstream curriculum? That's a great thing to mention, Ali, because a lot of us want to watch the outcomes. And so we're worried about content, we're worried about learning, whether they've learned enough, whether we've covered enough. Jenna May, yeah, you've really picked up on something important here, because external opinions really throw us. They really, really throw us. That person in the supermarket who goes, really? You've decided to keep homeschooling your kids even though COVID is finished? Wow, I was so keen to get mine back to school. Like, how do you know that you're covering enough? That grandparent that actually checks your child's reading or asks them maths questions at Christmas. That's one of the things that can really throw people. Yeah, so when people ask your kids, what did you do for school today? And they go, I don't know, we didn't do school. And you know you did stuff. But yeah, so the question was, what are the things that increase your fear and worry? What are the things that you worry that you're missing? Emily's put, she always worries that they aren't doing enough, and they unschool and they cover the kids' lead, like follow the kids' leads. And I've actually been kind of watching Emily's journey for a long time, because I know she's been in and out of all different things, and she's got some challenges that are pretty tricky. And Emily, I know that you're a good homeschool mum and doing good stuff for your kids. Okay, Nix has put, you're worried that you're not smart enough. And I have to say, that's a thing that lots of parents worry about. And I'm going to really address that a little bit later, because that's a really important thing to address. Emily, unfortunately, I can't click on the rest of your comment to see what else you wrote. It's not coming up for some reason. Ah, yes, I found it. So Emily says it's her anxiety about not doing enough, and her kids are happy to learn at their own pace. Leanne has really helpfully put in that the AP or your moderator might not think it's enough. And I know, I know that can get really stressful too, Leanne. So thanks for putting that in. Jennifer said, we worry when we get stuck on a topic which is meant to take one lesson, but ends up being 2 months. Hang on, I'm just trying to get the see more thing to work. Is that gonna, no, it's not coming up. I'm sorry, Jennifer. But I think I've got the hang of hopefully I've got sort of the gist of what you're saying. Something that you think should take a certain amount of time and takes a lot longer. Okay, so we've got some great, 2 months of really trying to grasp the topic. Yeah, okay, so that's super, super helpful. So let's have a little chat about those things first, because I think there's some really important things in there. One of the things that I think makes all of those things hard for people is that the school structure and the school curriculum makes it look like, here's the content that you have to get through in this time frame. Okay, now I want to explain something that's really important, because I want to free you from that. Okay, and I really do believe that this is true. All right, the school curriculum is created with a time frame and lots of boxes to check, because when you take nearly the entire childhood collection, so nearly all the kids in an entire country, you take them out of the real world and you put them into a confined space with a group of other kids born in the same year as them and a teacher, and you limit them to that space for 40 weeks a year, for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, you really need to be very careful that they're covering stuff. And so they create a curriculum to make sure that they've got some way to make sure that those kids will come across a reasonable amount of content in that time frame. Now, we don't actually need to worry about that, because the reason that they've done that is because they've taken all those kids out of the real world. And when our kids are in the real world with us, they're going to come across all the things that you come across in the real world, okay? And they're going to learn a lot of things in that real world space. So when our kids live real life with us, side by side with us, doing all the things that we do in our real life, they're going to come across all of the important stuff. Now, it's not going to be, I get it, it's not going to be exactly the same, and you're not actually going to tick all those boxes for the curriculum in the same way. Your kids are not going to be getting the same education. But that's okay. That's actually really okay, because the education that they're getting is actually really up to date and is actually exactly what's happening in the real world right now. Okay? And when you think about it, in school, what actually happens is that they're teaching kids the skill of paying attention to a certain amount of stuff, putting it into their head, being able to learn it, and then being able to reproduce it in a timed test independently in a certain format. Okay, but this isn't actually how the real world works. The skills that you actually need in the real world are to be able to think deeply about what's in front of you, communicate well with the people around you, use access to absolutely everything you have, including Google and your calculator and whatever else is available to you right then. Ask a friend, ask a parent, collaborate with other people to come up with real solutions for real things. Okay, and this is the actual skill that we need in our everyday life for nearly everything. Okay, and so this is the skill that we're really giving our kids, and we're not going to cover the mainstream content, but nearly every AP, nearly every moderator is actually quite we need to keep educating them, of course, about what real homeschool is like, but a lot of them are actually really, really good at understanding that homeschool works. And so as long as we present them with something that shows them that we've really got confidence and we've got a handle on this, most of the APs and the moderators and the registration people are actually going to be okay with what we're doing. That's one of the reasons that in Simply Homeschool we support people to register, because when you're feeling like that the first time, it can be really stressful. And so getting through that first thing, that first registration can actually be quite anxiety producing, but it's actually okay. Once you've done it a few times, you go, oh, yeah, this is going to be okay, and I've got this. Rebecca Faye has put in a comment, she worries about covering enough and keeping each child's interest in a topic. Yeah, that's a really good one, Rebecca, because that's actually much closer to real life, and that's kind of a parenting thing. Keeping your kids' interest and keeping them learning is actually really that's really a homeschool skill. That's something that that you want to pull in as much support around you as you need to do that really well. And some kids can be very hard to engage. Again, that's why we work hard to support people and give people really good learning stuff. You need to pull in whatever it is you do and however it is you do your schoolwork. You want to pull in the best support around you that you can to keep your kids engaged. And Emily, that goes back to what you do. I know that you keep changing what you do because you work very hard at getting what is just right for your kids at the stage that they're at. Now I can't remember who it was, but somebody posted, because it's a little bit hard to scroll back here, but somebody put in, hang on, I'll see if I can find it, a question that they actually worry about being smart enough as a parent. I want to, and Robin's put in maths and English levels. Hang on, I'm trying to see if I can find the person who, Nix. So I want to tell you a little story for those two people because it's really important, okay? We don't need to know all the stuff our kids are learning. So one of my kids, she's now a nurse, all she wanted to do in high school was human biology. It was the only thing she wanted to do. I'd never done biology in my life. I knew almost nothing. And so what I did was I found the best biology program that I could find for her. Now, whether it's maths or English or science, like whatever it is, or whether it's something that you're trying to keep your kids interested in, you found them something that you think is the best thing for them. We don't need to know that, okay? What we need to know is how to use our adult parent skills to be able to access the right stuff for our kids, like the best stuff for our kids that we can find. And then we need to use our best parent skills to help them understand that. Okay, so for example, I bought my daughter towards the end of high school, an advanced human biology course. So this was kind of American college level kind of course, and she was doing it instead of year 11, I think. It was really hard. It was this great big fat textbook and another great big fat notebook, and it was pretty much the only school that she was doing. I couldn't understand it at all, right? So once during the year, and I have to say it was only once, she came to me and she said, I don't understand this. And I thought, uh-oh. But I actually read the page out loud to her. It was a couple of paragraphs, and I read it out loud to her. She corrected my pronunciation because part of her study was watching lots of Grey's Anatomy. And she corrected my pronunciation as I went because I had no idea. And then I rephrased it to her. So I'm good at grammar, right? I used my own skills. I'm good at English. And I used my own grammar skills to rephrase her question. So I said, does that mean that when this does this in this place, then this is what happens? And she goes, yeah, thanks, Mum. That was it. That was the only help I gave her because I didn't know anything about biology. I also have heard a lovely story about a mum who didn't know how to read. School had failed her. And when her son was in year 5 or 6, school was failing her son, and she was devastated because he wasn't learning to read, and she knew how hard that was for her. So she pulled him out of school. Now this, like for most of you, you can obviously read, okay? You can write. You've typed it. You've typed into the box. This mum taught both of them to read, okay? Because she is the most motivated person in the world to teach her son to read, and she taught herself to read and him to read because it mattered to her, okay? You've really got this because you're a competent adult in the real world. You live in the real world. You really can do this. Okay, so on to the next question. My next question is, now this is gonna be a little bit daunting and a little bit fun at the same time, okay? I want you, I love that story too, Nix. What I want you to post into the comments. So one of the things that people worry about is that they're not giving their kids enough opportunities to do whatever it is, okay? So it could be, so I'll tell you one for me, okay? When my kids were younger, I really, really wanted to be able to send them to music classes, okay? I had loved music as a child. I'd learned piano for a lot of years. And I had a friend who sent all her kids to preschool music classes. And I really, really, really wanted to send my kids, and I actually couldn't afford it. And I felt so sad. I felt that really big FOMO thing because I really wanted the very best, beautiful opportunity. I wanted to send my kids to the conservatorium for music lessons as kids, small kids, right? And I couldn't. That wasn't something I could afford. It wasn't something I could do. Interestingly, I'm musical, and their dad was musical. We had a piano in the house. We had a guitar in the house. And little bit by little bit, we taught our kids music. And as adults, 2 of them are quite competent. And what was really nice is that that one of my teenagers, when she was about 15, she wanted to learn to play something, and I was talking to her about the music, and I realized she didn't actually know the names of the notes on the piano. She could play anything she wanted to play. She could listen to it and play it. She had learnt that skill, and she hadn't wanted to read music. She thought it was a bit of a waste of time. She could play anything she wanted, but it was such a homeschool story because She learnt what she wanted to learn without actually knowing the names of the notes on the piano. If you asked her where a G was, she had to figure it out, which is like, it's kind of cool though, isn't it? Because when they're really, Emily, that goes back to what you were saying before, when they're really motivated to learn something and do something, they'll learn it in their own way. And if you can, I used to go and give her 30-second lessons because I could hear her frustration with something, and I'd go and just show her the couple of notes she was missing so she could see where they were, so she could keep going. And so what I want you to post in the chat, because we're going to be able to see really quickly something important, okay? I want you to post in the chat all the things that you wish your kids could do. Like all the activities that you wish you could provide for your kids. So all the different lessons, all the different activities, in a magical world where there were enough hours in the week and enough money in your bank account and enough activities near you. What are all the things that you'd love for your kids to be doing? Okay, so lots of chat. Start popping into the chat every single activity that you wish your kids could be doing. I could list off a whole heap that I would have loved for my kids to have done. Okay, so Claire has put drama. There's got to be more than that. Everybody is not only wanting their kids to do drama. There are so many things available. All the things available in your community, all the things you know your friends are doing. Sarah would like her kids to learn good time management. Shannon's put horse riding lessons. Yeah, that's definitely a big money hungry one, isn't it? I love the time management one. Emily said, we're living our dream on a farm. My daughter wants a horse though. Claire wants musical theatre. Kylie Ray has put art, music and woodwork. Leah's put guitar lessons and circus trick lessons. Sarah has put languages. You've already got 2 languages in your house, Sarah. What else have we got? Now, even with just those things that people have listed already, it's not actually possible for us to do everything that's in the list. So we've got, 3. Yeah, you have 2. We've got coding and tech design, manual arts, woodwork, metalwork. Thanks, Paige and Jenna May. Yeah, so Sarah, you've already got languages. Leah's got coding. Video game design, yep. Dance, art, any musical instrument they want. We have very few teachers here. How not to use technology as their default. Oh my goodness, yeah, that's a really big one, Rachel. I'm sure there'd be lots of parents who would really, really like their kids not to use technology as their default. I'm just having trouble getting the rest of your comment to drop down at the moment. I'm sorry. Martial arts. Yeah. That's a really good one too, Ruth. What I'm going to suggest is that when you look at that list, it's not actually possible in a year for your kids to do all the things that you really want them to do. Okay. So you actually have a few options. Okay, so this is one of the things that I discovered in my homeschool journey, and we chose one option out of here, and I've got a friend who's mainly chosen a different option, and I think both things are valid. Looking back now, I think both things are valid. Okay, if you have 13 years of your kids being at home, so say you have 10, let's shorten it because they might go to TAFE, all right? So say you have 10 years of your kids homeschooling, all right? If they do 2 different activities a year and you change all the time, every year, every half year, you change, you've got 20 different activities that they can try. Now, this can be one really good option, okay? If you can give your kids a little taste into 20 different activities, there are going to be a few things that they actually pick up, all right? So they may actually pick up horse riding. You may actually end up getting the horse and doing the horse thing. You may do archery or surfing, and that's a thing that they really take on. One of them may start doing languages on Duolingo as one of their things, and that's something that they pick up and they end up going overseas to work in that country. Christy's just posted a whole heap of other really interesting things. So one option is that you can do little bursts of things and go, well, do you like this? Do you like this? How much do you like this? And give them a little taste into lots of things. Because when you give your kids a little taste into all different things, you give them the opportunity to like different things and to develop hobbies and skills and interests in all different areas of their life. And you don't know out of those 20 things which things they'll pick up and keep. And you also don't know out of those 20 things which things a quality home library. That's a really good one. That's a great one, Kate. Which of those things that they will actually come back to later because they learnt some skills in it and they'll come back to it later. So some of the things that my kids, so that's actually what we chose to do. We sort of took up different opportunities all the time and sort of did little bits of everything, a lot. And so one of my kids still really loves fishing. One of them loves camping. One of them, I think, when they get their own home, will actually have chickens because that was a thing they loved. They don't at the moment, but they get, my son, every time he comes to my house, he goes to visit the chickens and gives them a hug because he really likes my chickens. So perhaps when he has his own house, that's something that he'll do. One of my daughters just lives in a rental property, but she's got a little garden bed that's just a portable one because that's something that she grew to love, being at home. A couple of the older ones love art and still do some art. One of them does some pottery, fishing, soccer, music. One of them has moved out and bought a piano because they wanted to keep playing piano. So doing little bits of stuff and not all at the same time is one way to manage that. And another way to manage it, which some families do, is to just do one thing at a time and do it really well. And that can be a really good option too. And the reason that one option can be really good is because if your kids become very competent at something, that grows their confidence as a person. And that's actually a really important thing. If you can give your kids one thing that they're really skilled at, and it actually doesn't matter what it is, right? It can be fishing, it can be dancing, it can be music, it can be making food, it can be building websites, it can be a language. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what that thing is. If your kids develop interests and skills, that's really important. Okay, so either of those things or even a mixture of those things is okay, because they might find one thing that's really good and they do a lot of, and other things that they do little bits of. Okay, now that's going to lead into, and you can't do everything. Okay, so I do want to say that homeschool is a little bit like a smorgasbord, and when you're thinking about how much is enough, all right, I want you to imagine this for a minute. Okay, you take your family out to dinner and you go to one of all those all-you-can-eat buffets. Alrighty, now you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Now this is a little bit like unschooling, all right, because you have this buffet in front. Actually, it's a little bit like homeschooling, really, because you actually have this buffet in front of you. You can't eat it all. Your kids can't eat it all. And you don't want to, because what happens if you eat too much, right? You get to the end of the night and you actually feel awful because you ate too much. So it's not actually about what's enough. It's actually about finding your family sweet spot and finding what's actually best for your family. Because imagine you go to that all-you-can-eat buffet, and what's really the best is if you actually had enough to eat, but not too much. If you had just the right amount, and your tummy's feeling full and comfortable. And what's even better is if you actually ate it slowly and thankfully and mindfully, and you enjoyed every mouthful, and you can remember the sweet crunchiness of the coating on the honey chicken and the saltiness of the few fries that you ate, and that really crunchy salad that was delicious, and that sweet dressing, and the amazing cake that you shared with two of your kids at the end because you were feeling a bit full and you didn't want to eat too much. But what you remember the most was your youngest snuggled up on your lap, laughing at grandma's jokes, and the dad jokes, trying to compete and keep up, and your two teenagers talking to each other, and the sweet conversations that you had. Now, that might not actually be your smorgasbord experience, but you know, and I know, that when you go out to dinner, the thing that actually matters the most are your relationships and the memories that you build in that space, right? And homeschool's actually the same. It's not about fitting everything in. It's about this journey. You have this one sweet journey with your kids that you love. And what you really need to do is find this sweet spot and go slow enough that you can actually enjoy the journey. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much content you can shove in. You're not going to get to the end of this and wish you'd shoved in more content, okay? You're going to get to the end of this, and what matters most is that your kids are confident and competent and have good relationships with you and with each other, okay? And we know that that actually really matters the most as homeschool parents. That's the thing that actually makes it enough, okay? And so there's a few things in that you want to remember really carefully, okay? One, you're a competent adult in the real world, okay? Now, if you're a competent adult in the real world, don't worry too much about the curriculum, because you actually know what your kids need to be a competent adult, and you're actually watching that as a parent all the time, okay? That's just what we do as parents, as part of parenting. We keep helping our kids learn to grow up. We notice all those tiny little things and we just keep adjusting them, and we just keep doing little bit by little bit, right? We just keep helping our kids move towards adulthood. That's what we do. That's parenting, okay? So just apply your parenting skills to your homeschooling. Don't worry that you don't know enough, okay? Because you do know enough. You are a competent adult in the real world. Okay, so as long as your kids grow up to be competent adults in the real world, they're going to be okay, all right? And that's really important. Okay, so you really can do this, and you have really good skills that are just unique to you. Okay, you might be running a farm and you're giving your kids the farm experience, and they're learning farm stuff. That's your family flavor. That's the thing you do. Your family may speak 3 languages, okay? This is a specialty. This is a great gift that you're offering your kids that's unique to you. It's not about doing what everybody else is doing. It's not about comparing. It's not about doing all the stuff. It's about being what's unique for your family, helping your kids grow up to be competent adults, and enjoying each separate moment, being present in what you're doing, enjoying your day, whatever that is, enjoying your kids, whatever that is, passing on whatever skills it is you have, right? One of the skills that I'm passing on to my kids is about business, because I run a business. They see me run a business. They're learning business skills. So whether they like that idea or not, as whether they want to do that or not, that's a unique thing about our family that has actually been passed down from generation to generation, multiple generations, is running a business. That's something that I've learned from my own parents, and most of my siblings do that, and I'm passing that on to my kids. It's a skill that they're going to have, okay? Because each family is unique. You cannot stuff everything in the world into your child, okay? They're not going to feel good, all right? What you really want to do is find your family sweet spot and just give your kids what's right for them. You know your own child. You know each child. You love your child. You're a competent adult in the real world. You really, really can do this. And I'm going to tell you just a couple more little things that are going to help you, just really practical things, okay? So that's the majority of the stuff. That's really the majority of the stuff. You are enough. Your family is unique. You can do this, okay? A couple of really short tips. One is, when you're writing down your goals for the year, I do encourage you to write goals for the year, actually, because you often actually achieve them. make it achievable. Like, choose things that are achievable. I actually recommend, this is our planner. And one of the reasons that this is great, if you haven't got one yet, we've still got some left, and you can buy it. So there's a few reasons that this is great. Okay, one is I don't know if you can see this, but there's a page with strengths and interests and goals. Okay, but you can do this on a piece of paper. But this is something that you can put into your diary. These are totally beautiful, and I use mine every day. I really, really love our diaries. So 1, write down achievable goals. 2, when you feel like you're not doing enough, I know some APs in New South Wales and in some other states as well like you to keep a daily diary. Don't do it for the AP, all right? Do it for yourself, all right? When you feel like you're not doing enough, and you don't have to do it all the time. This has it has nice big squares for each day. So this is an A4 book, and it has nice big rectangles, I probably should say, to be correct. Write down not the school subjects you did, but the conversations you had and the daily life skills that your kids were working on. So they hung out the washing. One of them went to an appointment. You had a conversation in the car about road signs and driving skills. You talked about how far it was to somewhere and had a distance discussion and a fuel discussion. Write down all the discussions that you have and all the things you talked about and all the questions your kids ask just for a few days. And you're going to discover that you are doing so much. You have all this space. That is the space, that discussion, learning, daily life space is the space you are passing on so much. You are passing on adult life, little mouthful by little mouthful, so that your kids don't get stuffed, right? Just little bit by little bit. Write down your discussions in your journal. If you're going to get one of these, fill it up with the great questions that your kids ask and the good discussions that you have. Because when you look back on that, you're going to see how good that is. Okay? Now, last thing, and I've been saying this for the last few weeks, we've actually had planner sessions where we've helped people use their planners to plan their terms for next year, or plan the beginning of first term for next year. This is my last thing, okay? And I've said this a few times in the last week. Last thing. If I gave you a bucket of rocks, a bucket of sand, a bucket of water, bucket of gravel, and then I gave you an empty bucket, how are you going to get the most in your bucket, right? So the rocks and the sand and the gravel and the water, these are the things that you have available to you. But you know you can't fit 4 buckets worth of stuff into your bucket, okay? What do? How do you get the most in there? You put the rocks in first, okay? You've got to figure out in your life, what are your rocks, okay? And I'll tell you what a few of your rocks are. Your rocks are your relationships with your kids, their mental health, eating healthy food, getting outside so they get vitamin D and exercise. Okay, these are your rocks. Okay, put your rocks in first. And you might have a few other rocks. You might have some therapy rocks. They're rocks that your family needs to survive. You might have relative rocks, relatives that are precious to you, that you go to visit regularly. You may go camping a few times a year, and they're your rocks. They're part of your rocks, okay? I know for us, when I look back, some of the things that I'm most pleased we did as a homeschool family was go camping a fair bit. So put your rocks in first, and they may include some of your biggest goals. You may have a rock this year next year that's teaching one of your kids to read. They may be 10 and not reading yet, and you really, really want to get them reading. And so that might be one of your rocks. Okay, put your rocks in first. Once your rocks are in, then add the gravel, because the gravel will slip around the edges of the rocks and fill up the cracks. Okay, so that's the next important thing. That might be like your other subjects and dance lessons or soccer, like whatever it is. Okay, put your gravel in next. Then shuffle the sand down, okay? So keep pouring the sand on top and shuffle it down. And finally, when you think the bucket's completely full, slowly add the water, okay? Because if you put your rocks in first, at least you're going to get in what's important. And you really, really can do this, okay? I know that you can do this because your family is unique. You are a skilled, competent adult in the real world. You know your kids. You love your kids. And you got this. Okay, feel free to keep popping stuff in the chat. We'll keep an eye out there for the next hour or so. And it's been really lovely to spend time with you tonight. And remember that you are enough. What you are doing is enough. Put your rocks in first. Okay? And you've got this. Good night, everybody.